got my thing turned up.
It says I just turned on a recorder.
I have you. Yes.
Okay. You had something with the record. So now we're recording all of this discussion because I had to turn the recording on my location.
Okay.
So let me turn off the recording and see if you can hear now on.
Got it. And welcome everyone. We're just going to go live on Facebook here. All right. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the fourth in our series, our Footprint series, sponsored by AARP, Juneau Community Action Team, and the Juneau Commission on Sustainability. We're happy you could join us. I'd like to start this evening by acknowledging that the borough of Juneau is on the lands of the Clonedy and the Wishkitan, of the Aquan and the Ishkitan of the Takuquan. These clans have been an integral part of our community's history, and because of their resilience, they continue to live on their land today. We're able to enjoy this beautiful place because of the wise stewardship practiced by the ancestors of these clans. We're grateful for their continuing stewardship and care. Gunashish. I'd also like to thank Lillian Petershore for her guidance and assistance with this acknowledgement. Gunashish, Lillian. AARP is the largest member organization in Alaska with over 75,000 members aged 50 and older. The AARP mission is to enrich quality of life and empower people to choose how they live as they age. Dr. Carolyn Brown, who works with the AARP CAT in Juneau, brought the idea of this series to our action team, and we agreed it was a good idea that fit with our mission. And we reached out to the Juneau Commission on Sustainability, and Steve Benke put us in touch with Anjali Grantham, and we're on our way to partnering this series. Through the series, we hope to increase community engagement by presenting useful information and practical solutions that can be implemented at the community, family, and individual level. We hope these sessions empower people to take action in whatever ways are appropriate and feasible. Before I turn the evening over to Anjali to introduce tonight's panel, I'd like to say thank you to Anjali, Steve Benke, and all of the presenters who have helped with the production of this series. Thanks to AARP Alaska State Director Teresa Holt, Associate State Director for Communications Katie Severin, and Daryl Royce, Associate Station Director for Outreach, and for all their help and support with making this event happen. There's all kinds of behind the scenes things that I could have never figured out on my own. So thank you all. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to Anjali to take it away, and I'll be back later. Enjoy the evening performance.
Thanks, Linda. Welcome, everyone. As Linda mentioned, I'm Anjali Grantham. I'm Vice Chair of the Juneau Commission on Sustainability, or as we call it, JCOS. And JCOS is an Assembly-appointed advisory panel, and we're here to advise the Assembly on all things related to sustainability for CBJ. These days, we have a host of active committees. We're working on outreach, we're working on energy issues, we're working on resource recovery and solid waste issues, as well as coming up with a climate change impacts report. A lot of our time these days is dedicated towards issues such as dock electrification, electric buses, and doing whatever we can to advance the Juneau Renewable Energy Strategy and the Juneau Climate Action and Implementation Plan. And this includes outreach events like this one. So tonight, we are in for a treat. We're going to learn all about electrification of transportation and how that applies to our lives in Juneau. We'll learn about what's coming down the pike when it comes to electrification of transportation, and things like charging stations, new EV models, the future of electric ferries, all sorts of things like that. So I'm going to hand it over to Duff Mitchell now. He will start us off, And then we're going to hear from Devin Kibbe and Rich Ross as well. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Some questions we might be able to answer, as the panelists are presenting. Others we might wait until the end to answer, but stick around and we will get to your questions. So Duff, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Anjali. And thank you, Linda and Anjali, for setting this up for our community. So I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm the managing director of Juneau Hydropower. I'm an early adopter of electric vehicles. I bought an electric vehicle when there was less than 10 of them in Juneau because I got the special EV rate by being a test person for AL&P. I helped co-found the Juneau Electric Vehicle Association with Devin and a couple other people. And I also too am a member of the Juneau Commission on Sustainability. Tonight, we also have Rich Ross, Juneau's Capital Transit Superintendent. And, the Capital Transit, as many of you know, operates the first electric bus in Alaska. Then we have Devin Kibbe. And Devin has been very instrumental in vehicle charging rates and structures all across the state. He's a licensed electrical engineer. He's a president of GEVA and a president of the Alaska Electric Vehicle Association. He's also a principal of Alaska Pacific Alternatives, LLC. So here's some pictures of some early transportation in and around Juneau. That middle car up at the top, that was the first car that has been recorded historically in Alaska, and it was hand built by a gentleman. I think it was like a two-cylinder motor in Skagway. The rest of those are pictures of the Juneau mining era. So I want to give you a transportation perspective. For 3,000 plus years, mankind used horses for transportation, for hauling, for moving goods, as well as people. So here's a picture of New York City in 1900. And there's all the horses. This is an Easter Day parade. It's all horses, and you can see where the arrow goes to one vehicle. And somebody had horses produced. It was an unsanitary situation in many urban buildup areas. But now we go to 1913 and almost the same position and picture. And where's the horse? There's one. In a mere decade, we transformed American transportation from horses to vehicles. And it was very disruptive. Blacksmith shops and others that catered to horses, the troughs for watering, they all started disappearing. And we even had vehicular horse manure cleaners for the horses that remained. So early vehicles were taking hold in many specialized applications. If you look up to the top left, there was a 1909 electric Studebaker. People have heard of Studebaker, but their first vehicle was actually electric. And this is a tunnel between the Capitol and some of the buildings that they used to have with horses. And they moved them to electric because one, you couldn't have the fumes in the basement areas. And two, it was clean, new, and electric. And so that was some of Studebaker's early market. And then we have a UPS truck in 1933 that was all electric, delivering in Chicago. So what changed and why did EVs fade away in the early 1900s? This picture I have here is a picture of Clara Ford's 1914 Detroit electric model 47 Brougham. Even though her husband owned the Ford Motor Company, she drove electric vehicles, loved her electric vehicle, and would not drive her husband's makes and models, which I found interesting. Why? Well, the old engines didn't have electric start and they did not have starters, so you would have to hand crank them. And you certainly couldn't hand crank a 6 or 8 cylinder vehicle, but it was tough enough for a 4-cylinder, which was very inconvenient for women or people with disabilities or people that just didn't have the strength. So when electric starters came in, Charles Kettering invented them, actually working with some patents from Tesla. Convenience became equal. Now you could turn a key on or hit a button and you could get your engine started with a touch rather than with a crank. And also, as gas engines had more range, roads also developed. So in the very early days when we had beginning of transportation in America, there wasn't a lot of developed roads to travel from city to city. And as that developed, battery technology just could not compete with gas engines. So fast forward 22, where are we at today? Well, today, the U.S. transportation sector contributes 29% of the total U.S. greenhouse gases. This is from the EPA. Electricity generation in our country is about 25%, followed by industrial uses for energy. So in that transportation, it isn't just all vehicles. It includes ships, and it also includes trains and other transportation such as air. So what exactly is an EV? We've all heard EV, we got hybrids, we got plug-ins, we got BEVs. What exactly does all that mean? Well, there's three main types of electric vehicles. So on your left, you have a hybrid electric vehicle. A hybrid only takes gasoline engine. It has electric motor and it has a battery, but it isn't plugged in. So you can't import any new electricity into the system. It's all self-contained. And so a lot of the early models were hybrids. And then we moved to plug-in hybrids, which take gasoline, but they also have electric motor. And so you charge it and then you run on electric. And then when that electric battery expires, usually they're a much smaller battery than an entire electric vehicle, then your gasoline engine kicks on. And then a battery electric vehicle is 100% electricity. There is no gasoline in the vehicle. So some people say an EV is a pure EV. Other people say a plug-in hybrid electric is also an EV. And some people feel a hybrid electric is an EV. But the evolution of what we've seen in the last 15, 20 years is we've gone from hybrid electric to plug-in hybrid electric. And now the majority of the new vehicles coming out are battery electric, pure EVs. So consumer acceptance, and this is very interesting because it's changed radically in just 2 years. In 2018, the AAA, American Automobile Association, did an extensive survey, and it found 1 in 5 U.S. drivers want to drive an electric vehicle, which is about 20%. I throw another slot or a piece of information is because Nissan also did an internal poll on their customers and found that 92% of the Leaf drivers would recommend an EV to their friends and family, and that 74% of Leaf owners say they would likely purchase another EV in the future. What we have found, not only from Nissan, but anecdotally, is that once you go to electric, it's so quiet, it's so clean, you just speed by the gas station, you don't worry about the prices. I am not aware of too many people that have gone and bought an electric car and then shelved their electric car and went back to gas. So now let's flash forward to 2020. Remember, 2 years ago, 2018 basically, or 4 years ago, I should say now, 20% of Americans would consider buying an electric vehicle. Now on average, it's 43%. And there's a difference between demographic groups. So certain demographic groups are much higher and much more willing to purchase an electric vehicle than others. And this came from the consulting company Morning Consult. So where are electric vehicle sales and forecasts coming? It's changing rapidly, and we're going to start seeing a lot more electric vehicles on the road. In 2030, we're looking at not 30% of all of the vehicles on the road, but we're seeing 30% of the EVs of the total share of vehicles that are being sold. So the market is transforming right before our eyes. Further, new polling suggests that Americans support the full transition to electric vehicles by 2030. Again, this shows like 55% on this poll, and this was with the Yale program on climate change with the George Mason University. What that means is there's regulatory pressure to transition. So this little map is a government phase out of the internal combustion engines. Canada, California, Costa Rica, Chile, New York, and that's in the Americas. And now we're looking at all the smaller European countries. Norway is very heavily invested into electric vehicle transportation, as is Iceland, which is another cold country, Ireland, Denmark, and it goes on. Most of them are looking at a phase out in the 2030. So by California going electric or putting its legislative factors in with regulatory really has forced the American automobile manufacturers to go to electric. Why? Because of the fifth, if California was a state, it's the fifth largest economy in the world, and you sell a lot more vehicles in California than you do in South Dakota. So in order to meet those market standards, this is where it's going. So here's some breaking news. Not to be outdone, the Washington State Legislature earlier this year, and it was just signed by Governor Inslee on March 29th, that they are now going to have a 2030 target of phasing out the sale, purchase, or registration of new cars powered by gasoline or diesel. This is going to have an impact on Alaska because a lot of Southeast Alaskans buy new vehicles or sometimes even used vehicles from the state of Washington. So where do electric vehicles fit in with our Juneau policies? Although we don't have regulatory policies that direct, they're somewhat aspirational, but nonetheless, they demonstrate what our community values are, and electric vehicles are pronounced in both the Juneau Climate Action Plan and the Juneau Renewable Energy Strategy. We also in 2015 passed Resolution 2722, which was the CBJ supporting the advancement of electric transportation vehicles and with the supporting resolution, which has helped us through that resolution and through these community value documents obtain grants for transforming our public buses. The government likes to see that that your local government is supporting that transformation. So where are we at with the S-curve? An S-curve and the adoption curves are business, they're used in business. The curves are used in business to see where the market is going, where it has been, and where it's heading. And you can see that, we're pretty low on the curve, actually. We're getting higher. Norway is very far advanced from everyone else. They have an extremely high tax on gasoline vehicles, and they have no tax on electric vehicles. And so that has really helped them move the needle toward electric. They are almost all their electrical production in Norway is hydroelectric. And they feel by doing this and promoting this through their government standards that they're keeping their country independent from any foreign influence of oil or oil volatility prices on their economy. So on the right, we have the product adoption curve. And so the curve starts out with, the real techie enthusiasts, the innovators, the people that are, hey, I want to get in on the latest new gadget, latest new, and they're willing to pay more. And usually they're willing to test it out, and they're willing to put up with problems that maybe the majority of the people won't. And so it goes from tech enthusiasts to early adopters, which are visionaries, the early majority, which is the pragmatist. It's like, hey, I heard Devin and Duff and other folks said this thing works pretty good. All right, I'm going to take the jump. And then you have the people that are the stalwarts against it. And then you have the skeptics. And even the skeptics are laggards, and they eventually. So I remember when cell phones first came out, how some people really thought that was just terrible stuff. And why would you want to have one? And now it's really hard to find anybody that doesn't own one. So, okay, that's all great, but hey, where's Alaska headed? So based on third quarter 2021, which is the last numbers I have, Juneau was running around just about 550 vehicles. And you can see by the curve, it's been growing nicely. The big jump occurred when we started having, we ended up getting other models than just the Leaf. And also we had a lot of Chargers being placed in Juneau. So this is from the Rocky Mountain Institute and kind of breaks down what state loves what kind of car. And you can see that the number one vehicle, and 47% of Alaskans drive an SUV. Another 30% drive pickups. So we're both high in SUVs and pickups, which means only 33% of our population is driving cars. And that's important. That's important to realize, is the market supplying electric vehicles for what our market wants? And I just throw this slide out because this shows, again, an adoption curve of how fast transitions can occur. You can see, like in the middle of the 2005, 2000, the smartphone just took off straight up. Everybody had to have one. Cell phone, same way. PCs, owning a telephone and electricity in the 1900s. You can see the number, when the Depression hit, it kind of stalled. When the Depression hit, telephone, electricity, and cars didn't have much growth, but then bang, it's back up. And now, telephone, electricity, cars are almost 100%. But then you go over to here where you have social media, which is Facebook and internet, it's much steeper. And I just point out some of the companies we used to know and see, like the Remington typewriter. Adoption technology can brutally change markets, and companies disappear if they don't either change or go with the times. And I think you're seeing that with some of the car makers now coming into electric vehicles. They know that they have to go where the market is going. So what's your prediction? We all can speculate. We can all have crystal balls, and probably none of us is right and none of us is wrong. But I will say, from others, the prediction is only up. So if you look at the Bloomberg chart here on the left, they have Exxon, who has an interest in oil. You have OPEC, who has an interest in oil. You have British Petroleum, who has an interest in oil. And you have the International Energy Agency, which is kind of neutral. But you also have Bloomberg's, which is technically neutral, and you can see that they all have varying degrees of how fast electric vehicles are going to be in so many millions. And this is worldwide. This isn't just U.S. But the point is those graphs look pretty steep as you travel from 2022 on out to 2040. If you look at the other graphs, they're similar. OPEC is very much studying the electric vehicle market, and why wouldn't they? When 29% of America's energy or greenhouse gases is coming from diesel distillants or gasoline, they have to analyze these things from their market perspective, and how do they plan for their budget's future, hence with not only price of oil, but also supply and how the market is headed. Okay, that's all good, but hey, what's in it for me? What's an EV good for me? Well, lower overall maintenance. So here's a picture. This was done by Tony Seba, and he was one of the early mentioners of talking about this transformation that is going to come out and how it's a disruptive. And of course, he was promoting this because you should get into, buying Tesla when it was $38 and now it's $1,000. So if you would have listened to Tony Seba in his early days, you might have made some money. But the gasoline car has 2,000 plus moving parts, and an EV has 18 moving parts. So you just have less stuff to go wrong. So let's look at efficiency. An EV is 5 to 6 times higher than that of a internal combustion vehicle. So if you see that, not only is that less emissions, but you got more output, they're faster, they have more torque, and it's a better use of the resources. Okay, so I've updated this number since the last time that I presented a slide deck on electric vehicles. So I updated to the current price in Juneau at $4.25, $4.25 gas. I used to have it at $3, which is an indication of how volatile fuel prices can be. And if you have an electric vehicle, you remove all that volatility. So where I used to say, hey, if you drive an electric vehicle, it's worth a permanent fund check, give or take $1,000 a year. Now it's a little bit higher because as price of gas goes up, so does your savings. So an average EV at 14 cents a kilowatt, and why I use 14 cents a kilowatt? Because if you look at your AL&P bill, even though the power cost is 11 cents, when you add in all the service charges and all the other add-ons that they do, we just round it up to 14 cents. It's going to cost you about $400 a month. And that's if you drive 12,000 miles. If you take that same vehicle, 12,000 miles, which isn't a whole lot, it's going to cost you $2,040 at $4.25 at a typical vehicle at 25 miles per gallon. And to boot, you've saved 9,090 pounds of greenhouse gases. So you're basically removing 4 tons of greenhouse gas, and you're getting more than a PFD check every year by driving an electric vehicle. Now, in 2020, we had 25,508 registered vehicles in Juneau. Now we know that some of them are just towing a boat and they're used just on a weekend here or there. And so you really can't equate those to a 12,000 mile per year use. But if you took all 25,000 vehicles and you did that and they all were going 25,000, or all 25,000 vehicles were going 12,000 miles a year, the annual community savings by going electric would be a whopping $41.5 million. We would also remove 115 or almost 116,000 tons of greenhouse gas annually. And why I put this out here is because it put this in perspective. We're trying to reduce our greenhouse gases with our Juneau Climate Action Plan. And if we went all electric vehicles in Juneau, we would all collectively drop Juneau's greenhouse gases by 26.5%. So why electrify? There's a lot of vehicle benefits, and there's a lot of state and local benefits. One of them is jobs. And why I mention that, because a lot of people, no, I wouldn't say a lot of people, I'd say some people are still not concerned about greenhouse gases and climate change. But if they can be convinced that it's economic, and they can be convinced that it's better for jobs and competitiveness and national security, that's good with me. They're still buying an electric vehicle and they're still getting the benefits that we point out, but collectively and community-wise, they're also helping the community. So a big question, and this comes out with a lot of folks that maybe aren't so pro EVs. What do you do with these used vehicle batteries? And that's a very good question, because we don't want these all going to the landfill. But I'm here to tell you these vehicle batteries, used vehicle batteries, are very valuable and very expensive. So if you look at the top left, Nissan takes used leaf batteries in Japan and puts them out in rural locations where they didn't used to have street lights. And on the back of this neat little architectural light post, on the back is a solar panel, and that charges the vehicle charges the vehicle battery, the used vehicle battery, during the day, and then at night they come on. So the Leaf battery is now becoming a holding cell for solar power. Also, batteries can go into these battery packs that go to your home. And you don't need the same efficiency for a battery power pack as you do for your vehicle, because in a vehicle, you want to get all that range you can, and you want to get all that torque, and you want to get all that speed you can from your electric motor by displacing that energy, from the battery into your motor. And so it's really important to have efficient batteries for your vehicles. But after 10 or 12 years, that battery may not have the same longevity and the oomph that it used to have. So what Panasonic does is they turn around and they repurpose them and sell them into your cordless drills. People don't realize this, but some of your cordless drills already have used car batteries in them, and they work perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're being repurposed because they don't need to have that same size energy level. And then on the lower right, you can see banks of what we call utility grade battery storage. And again, those are using used batteries. Some are new, but some are used. Tesla recycles a lot of the
Duff, I think you froze. Are you there? Can somebody help him out until he can get back into shape here?
Yeah, I'm here. So looks like someone just asked a nice question in the chat. Maybe we could go to that real quick. And then if Duff reappears, we will keep going on his slides. What is the difference in cost between an EV and a similar gas car? So I'd say that EVs are still a little bit more upfront cost than the gas car. It depends on the make and model, but generally a economy size car like a Nissan Leaf or a Chevy Bolt is ranging in price maybe $25,000. And I would say the comparable gas price car is maybe $20,000. A lot of the cars that are sold right now that are EVs are Teslas, which are more of a luxury product. And so it makes it difficult to compare apples to apples on some of those prices, unless you're comparing to, say, like an Audi or another premium market segment product. But the price difference has definitely come down quite a lot just in the last 10 years. The Nissan Leaf, when it first came out, it was a $40,000 plus new for quarter of the car that you get today. And now, a Leaf is in the mid 20s and much more capable than the one that came out a decade ago. Please feel free to throw questions in the chat if you have anything. Okay, we'll go to plan B then. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Another question. How far can a battery electric vehicle go before needing to be charged? So I have a slide on this, and battery electric vehicles right now, I would say 50 to 70 kilowatt hours is kind of the average size of the battery. And in a summer case, we would expect to see 200 to 300 miles out of that battery. In the worst winter case, we'd see more in like the 150 mile range. So if you're up in Anchorage or Fairbanks, in the dead of winter, 150 miles. In the summer, 200, 250, 300. Yes, Duff has some great slides coming up They're actually the next ones on EV trucks and SUVs. Stay tuned. Hi, Duff.
Hi, hey, if you want me to, thanks for taking over, Devin. I'm sitting in DC and I got bumped off the internet and had to rejoin you. So thanks for
No
covering
problem.
that.
I bumped off too. I'm only at home.
Okay, well, I will, I'll pick up where I left off if that's all right.
You got the perfect question. It segued right into your next slide. So take it away.
And there's more trucks than this. This is what I quickly put together. There is going to be a plethora of trucks coming out. Stellantis, which is now the fancy name for Dodge and Jeep, are also coming out with trucks. They're not going to be left behind. There is a mad dash race for electric trucks. And Ford, has the #1 sales in the country, the Ford F-150. Now they're coming out with the E-Lightning, and they've been sold out for the entire production year of 2022 and the entire production year of 2023. So if you make a deposit today in 2022, you will not have a vehicle till 2024. So it's really changing. The Hummers are out. The Silverados are coming out about the same time as the Hummers. They're talking about 2023, 2024. The Rivian has started production. They have more demand than what they can meet, and they're trying to get better. So we're going to see a lot of, vehicles come out. The one that I really don't know and can't give much prediction on is the Tesla Cybertruck. It's supposed to have been out for over 2 years now. There's jokes and there's rumors that it's not even going to look anything like, what it says it is, or they're going to come out with a more conservative version truck along with the Cybertruck. So I missed the question, but I hope I'm helping you. There's also a lot of work being done on what we call the transit vans. Like the Ford E-Transit van, which could be for like shop vehicles or for taxis and those matters.
So one
Excuse
of the
me.
questions was just about what looks promising and affordable. And can you talk a bit more about EV trucks and SUVs? So I think on the affordability front, we're seeing those prices between internal combustion engine trucks and electric trucks come together pretty quickly. The last 6 months have kind of been a mixed bag, though, with the way material pricing has affected everything, and things are jumping around.
That's true. And if you want to buy what I call a utility grade truck, which isn't the leather seats, isn't all the special deals. I mean, all of them are advertising in the sub 40 range, which is competitive with a gas or a diesel truck. But the truck manufacturers know that, if you want air conditioning and you want the leather, well, air conditioning kind of comes with the base truck, but if you want all the bells and whistles, it goes up steeply very quickly. So it's really an interesting aspect. The other thing is depending on the manufacturer, like Tesla, you no longer receive a $7,500 rebate, but I believe on the Fords and the GMs, you will be able to get the $7,500 rebate coming back. So that could help lower some of the cost. Another thing which Chevrolet has jumped into is, Chevrolet has always had a performance division. And so they're making vehicles that can be plopped into any older Chevrolet. So if you have an old Camaro or you have an old Blazer that you really love, they're putting basically electric motor in a crate. They won't do the installation for you, but you can bolt it in yourself or take it to a shop who specializes in this, because there is a high demand for specialty retro versions of EVs. Can't tell you on the range because these trucks and these vans and older Camaros are not built, to be electric. So the aerodynamics and other things are still not going to probably give you the range that you would on, let's say, a Leaf or a Fisker that's coming out, or a Volvo. So electric transportation, what's the bigger picture? What's the next frontier? Well, glad everyone's asking, because there's already electric ferries all over this country. The Maid of the Mist up on the upper left is the oldest continuously operating ferry system in America. That's at Niagara Falls. And they are now 100% electric. And then we have other ferries in New York going, San Francisco. I don't have a list of them, but electric ferries are becoming a pretty hot commodity also in Norway, Sweden, the Baltic states. And there's also what we call hybrid ferries, which are electric as far as they can run, and then they go to diesel electric hybrid. So they're actually charging a battery. And I find this particularly interesting because Americans invented this technology for our diesel submarines in World War II. What people don't realize is they were all electric, and their diesel was used to power batteries, which were used as a technology back in World War II. So we're basically taking this technology that's been around for a good 80 years and putting it into propulsion systems for ferries. BC wants to be the leader in ferry transportation electric. They have a 36 vessel fleet. They have plans to convert at least half of it. They already have 6 operating, and they have 7 more on order. And they're saving a lot of money. So what about electric bikes and snow machines? Well, I've looked at electric bikes and they're not cheap. I got to say that. Costco had some for like $1,400. They got a pallet of them in, about 20 of them, and they sold out in a week and a half. So there's a bunch of electric bikes from Costco, but you can also pick them up at bike shops. And they run the gamut from, $900 to $1,500 for the low end, and then they can run up quite high. You can see $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 mountain bikes. So they're not cheap, but I think they're going to get cheaper. But the other electric bikes that you may see is if you go to a large community like Seattle or New York or Washington, D.C., there's now a lot of electric bike rentals for just getting around. And I would suggest that you patron one of these while you're in one of these communities just to see how you like it. And most of these electric bikes are pedal assist, so they're not pure electric with a throttle, but as you pedal, they assist you getting up hills and whatnot. And there must be a heck of a market because they're selling quite well. And then snow machines. Not so much in Juneau, but in Anchorage and other places, snow machining is a big part of Alaska lifestyle. And this company, Taiga, out of Canada, has now been selling electric snow machines for the last 2 years. Depending on the size of the machine and the battery size, you get anywhere between 60 and 80 miles of heavy use on the snow machines. And I know Skidoo and others are working on them, but I couldn't find any accurate prototypes that they currently are showing off. So electric buses, trucks, rail, heavy equipment, and vessels aren't fiction. They're already here. And you can kind of see, remember we were talking about the 29% transportation. Well, that 29% transportation includes all those buses, passenger, light, heavy vehicles, and you can see how they're also predicted to be changing in the future. Buses are really high priority for our government. There's a lot of subsidies going into converting our public transportation to electric buses, and for many reasons. The Federal Transportation Administration wants to reduce the operating costs for our public transportation fleet nationwide. The other thing is that diesel emissions are not healthy. And it's usually our lower income or poor or people who are disabled that must use public transportation are the ones breathing the fumes as these buses are pedaling by the bus stops. So as you can see, we're gonna start seeing some changes. So here's some pictures of some heavy duty trucks that are already on the roads. Volvo is coming out with an entire fleet, Freightliner as well. We already have electric school buses. We actually have an electric school bus in Tok that is working very well in Arctic conditions. And then we have delivery trucks. And many people have heard about the hoopla about the Postal Service. They're getting new vehicles, and I think that there was some reasons and rational that they should be going all electric, and that didn't happen. But I guess a portion of their new fleet will be electric. But UPS and all the delivery trucks, Amazon Prime, Amazon signed deals with Rivian to get so many thousand vehicles per year. So it's moving in the delivery trucks as well. And then here's some pictures of some electric fire trucks and sweepers and trash pickup. I believe Anchorage has an electric trash truck that they have been working with. And so you're going to start seeing this migration toward electric more and more as time goes by, and as battery prices go down, and as more city governments and more utility companies and other decide to start investing in electric vehicles for their fleet use. All right. Well, you've already been introduced to Devin. I want to turn it over to him about charging. Devin, just let me know when you want to flip the slide. And I just want to point out that little picture on the bottom. That's not Clara Ford's Model 14 or Model 74 or 47. I'm dyslexic. Model 47 Detroit electric. That's not her home, but that is a model being plugged in for use back in the 1910s. All right, Devin.
So we've talked a bit about, electric cars coming, but we haven't talked yet about what that means and how we operate them and what changes we might see versus gasoline vehicles or diesel vehicles. And so we're all pretty familiar with going to the gas station once a week, once a month to fill up. But with electric vehicles, having smaller ranges or batteries, we're typically looking at coming home and plugging in at home every night, which is actually really convenient and avoids the trip to the gas station. And it's nice every day starting out with a full tank of EV gas. So what the different studies have found is that, for example, in this NREL study, 88% of charging is done at the home. And so in Juneau, for example, the public chargers that are out there aren't necessarily people's only go-to. They are typically charging at home just because it's more convenient than having to track down one of these chargers and wait at it for hours at a time, compared to when you could plug in at home and go to sleep and let your car charge overnight. There are different types of chargers and charging ports on the cars, and this is slowly working itself out, but we're still in this kind of Betamax, VCR, DVD era of different ports and plugs on cars. And so this slide is about fast charging, which is more kind of equivalent to going to the gas station. And so for the Nissan Leaf, they are using the CHAdeMO port, which is slowly going away and is being succeeded by CCS. And of course, Tesla has their own. So at the moment, we're kind of in this stage of, is Tesla going to move to CCS, and is CCS going to become the North American standard, which wouldn't be surprised if it does. Here's some various pictures of chargers around Juneau. These are all level 2 chargers, except for the big white box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. that is a level 3 charger. I think I have a slide somewhere that explains the difference. But keep moving on. So the average time spent at the charger depends on how much juice you need to get, how depleted or full your battery is, and also the speed of the charger itself. So if you're charging on level 1 charging, which is just your standard household outlet, you could be there for all night or more. If you're charging on a level 2 charger, the average time or the recommended time that we ask people to stay is about 2 hours or less. And if you're on the fast charger, you're looking at half hour on an older car to an hour on a fully depleted newer car. With faster stations coming, that time period will definitely be in minutes. There's the slide. So there's 3 different types of charging. The way they define them is level 1, level 2, and level 3. And level 1 and level 2 are just providing AC voltage and power to the car, and the car transforms that to charge the battery. Whereas with level 3, you're bypassing that system, plugging right into the battery and charging it at a speed that's more or less as fast as the battery can handle it. So for level 1, like I said, you're just a normal electrical outlet in your house. Level 2 is power level similar to, say, an electric clothes dryer. It uses 240 or 208 volts, and a typical current is like 32 to 50 amps. So for a Leaf, they usually max out at 32 amps. For the newer Teslas and trucks, we're seeing more of that 50 amp, 60 amp range. So I've got a picture here of an oven or a stove or a clothes dryer. And for level 3 charging, you're looking at using as much power as, say, a large industrial service. So you have 3-phase, 480 volts, so a big building or a large industrial manufacturing load. And each of these chargers has different space and size requirements. A level 1 charger, it looks just like a glorified extension cord, and that's really all it is. There are some various safety features built into all of these so that there is not live voltage at the plug end until you plug it in, and the car more or less identifies itself to the charger and begins charging. A level 2 charger, it's a little bigger, but again, it's maybe the size of a toaster, so usually mounted on a wall. Sometimes people will carry them around in their car. I see this more up north where people are going from RV park to RV park to charge their EV. And a level 3 charger, fast DC charger, that charges your car in a few minutes, is a much larger 500,000 pound unit, mounts on a concrete pad. Looks like a fridge or a freezer. Some of them look fancier, some of them are literally just rectangular boxes. So what are the costs for these pieces of equipment? The level 1 charger usually comes with the car. They call it the trickle charger, the backup or emergency charger. A lot of people leave them in their electric vehicle, and if they're somewhere and they need to charge, they can get it out. A lot of people don't even know that they came with the car. Actually, had that happen a few times. When I found someone stranded somewhere, they took an extra trip or didn't anticipate something, and they found, oh, I can just get out this extension cord from the back of my car and plug it in, and I'll wait an hour or two and I'll have enough range to get back home. Level 2 charger, the equipment itself, it's a really simple piece of equipment. It's really just that cord and some of those safety features like ground fault interruption to protect anyone using the piece of equipment. And it runs about $500-600 for the non-smart versions that don't connect to the internet, which really seems to be a good value. And they're very low maintenance. They plug into the same kind of socket, a NEMA 1450 of the dryer or an oven range. And then level 3 chargers. So they come in different sizes based upon power usage. So a 50 kW charger that will say charge a Leaf in 20 minutes to 30 minutes, or a Tesla in about an hour and a half from dead to completely dead to full, runs about $30,000 plus installation maintenance. So a way higher cost per unit than the level 1 and level 2 chargers because of its increased electronic complexity. I mean, if you open up one of these level 2 or level 1 chargers, they just have a little switch in them and maybe a little computer board. And a level 3 charger, I mean, there's big transformer, there's electronic boards, there's all sorts of pieces of specialty equipment. So they cost a little more to run and install. So over the years, we've seen quite a change in the capabilities of electric vehicles. The most notable is in the battery size and the cost of that battery relative to the cost of the rest of the vehicle. So when the Nissan Leaf came out in 2011, 2012, 2013, I mean, my 2014 has the same battery, and they use this size for quite a few years. Only 24 kilowatt hours, and you can only use about 20 kilowatt hours. So most of the sizes that you'll see listed from manufacturers have a amount that's reserved out for keeping the battery in the sweet spot operationally. And so on 20 kilowatt hours, you're basically like 1 gallon of gas. And that's why the little battery capacity symbol is there. But the Chevy Bolt came around just 4 years later, and now you're running around with 2.5 times the best battery pack could hold that was put in the Nissan Leaf. A couple of years later, the Tesla Model Y, 75 kilowatt hours, and now in 2022, we're seeing the Rivian R1T truck shipping with its long-range pack of 180 kilowatt hours. It's a significant increase over the Leaf just a few years ago. And the price has come down so significantly on that battery that it makes sense. I mean, the Leaf was like $1,000 a kilowatt hour or thereabouts, 800. And we're now down into the $100, $150 kilowatt hour range. So almost a factor of 10 reduction in price. So the battery is no longer it's still a large factor of the cost of electric vehicle, but it's not, the cost that everyone talks about. Go back to that other slide, Jeff. So one other thing to note is just the amount of charging time. Get a lot of questions about that. So the charging time really depends on what power you give the car when it's charging. And so a Leaf maxes out at 6 kilowatt hours. So your charge time is no more than 4 hours. But if you have, say, a Tesla Model Y, and you charge it at the nominal rate that it can take 10 or 11 kilowatts, it'll take about 6 hours. With the R1T truck coming out, you're looking at a pretty hefty recharge time if you do manage to run that battery all the way down. Keep going. Okay, we did that slide earlier. So one of the things that we, as the EV Association, have helped people look at is getting our average cost to install this equipment, especially in public, down to a range that's affordable. And the reason is that there are ways to kind of leverage what existing infrastructure we have to provide charging opportunities for people and not spend too much. But if we go out and we just pick a spot that's doesn't really take into account the existing infrastructure, and we're building a lot of new infrastructure to provide that charging, then the cost can become extraordinarily expensive. And so with a lot of careful planning in Juneau, we've been able to achieve really low cost per port for public charging. Level 2, we kind of try to aim for that $3,000 to $4,000 per port, and the level 3 at 40 to 50. And so when we think that 30,000 of that cost for level 3 is just for the equipment, we're looking for an installation cost of $10,000 to $20,000, including bringing utility power in, building a new electrical service, and placing the charger and hooking it up. So got to be very careful with how we design and engineer these sites to make it cost effective. So one of the questions I saw in the chat was, how often do you replace the battery? I would say that the expected life in Alaska for these batteries is going to be really good, because a lot of their capacity degradation depends upon temperature. If it's cold here, they degrade a lot slower. My Nissan Leaf battery is coming up over 7 years old now, and still stores more than 90% of its original factory capacity. People down in Arizona, for example, were replacing their packs after a couple of years. That's improved quite a lot over time. And so we don't see these guarantees necessarily in the automotive industry as much, but for example, with utility lithium batteries, we're seeing warranties in the 15-year range and extended warranties in the 20-year range. So I would expect, or I am expecting, at least for my own vehicle, that 15 years plus is not unreasonable. And that's not when the battery goes kaput either. It's just when the battery stores some amount less than its factory capacity. So we'll turn it over to Rich and tell us about amazing buses.
Thanks, Devin. Thanks, Duff, and everyone who put this together. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to move. Let me just see if I can get it to re-go. It kind of locked up on me there. There we go.
All right, I'm Rich Ross. I'm with Capital Transit Superintendent. The city and borough of Juneau has made a goal of switching to 80% renewable energy by 2045. Part of that strategy to meet that goal is by electrifying the Capital Transit fleet. Much of the funding needed to purchase electric transit vehicles comes from grant opportunities made available by the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA for short. Next slide, Duff. In the latest rounds of grant funding, FTA has increased low and no emissions grant funding program by roughly 1,000%. So that's a pretty big deal. As Duff alluded to earlier in this presentation, the federal government is making a big push to shift towards electric vehicles. And one of the areas we're seeing this is in FTA's funding of transit buses. A lot of the seminars I've been to recently have said that by 2040 or 2045, there probably won't be funding to replace diesel buses. So fleets across the nation are going to have to adopt EVs, essentially. Capital Transit has been awarded multiple low-no grants totaling roughly $10 million for buses and related charging infrastructure. Next slide. One of the biggest challenges we've been working to overcome is making EV charging equal to or cheaper than operating diesel buses. Due to the local utility rate structure, the cost of electricity can vary a lot depending on the timing and how fast we decide to charge the buses. Ideally, we would charge them at the depot during off-peak hours and just do that, and that would get us our best rate. But before we can operate 100% of a 100% electric fleet, we would have, the range of the vehicles would have to improve. Next slide, please. Capital Transit is currently working to purchase its next 7 battery electric buses and depot charging infrastructure. These buses will replace 7 2010 diesel buses. Next slide, please. We are also working on constructing a new transit center located in the Mendenhall Valley. This transit center will feature a park and ride lot for commuters. During construction, we are installing the necessary conduit and electrical infrastructure to add en route pantograph charging later. Next slide. And this is a blueprint of what the Valley Transit Center will look like. On the left, you can see buses will be able to pull in and kind of go around that hair clip looking circle. And on the right side is a park and ride lot. The Valley Transit Center is going to be located between Agiana Gardens and Napa, across from the Mendenhall Mall. Next slide, please. Capital Transit was recently awarded a $1.4 million grant for en-route charging infrastructure. Overhead pantograph charging will allow us to keep the buses on routes longer and provide backup charging infrastructure in case of a failure at our depot. Next slide. The City and Borough of Juneau is proposing to use cruise ship passenger fees to fund a study on circulator shuttle bus for the downtown area as well. Potentially, this service could utilize smaller, low-floor electric buses, such as the one pictured, and help cruise passengers explore more of the downtown area. Another benefit could be that locals would be able to utilize this service and reduce downtown vehicle congestion. And that's all I've got. I'd be happy to answer anyone's questions.
Well, Devin, if you could, get back on and unmute yourself, we'd be happy to take any questions. I want to say thanks to Rich and Devin. I appreciate everyone sticking through with a little bit of technical difficulty, which happens at times with distance and internet. And I'd like to open it up for anybody's questions if you want to add some into the chat, or if Linda or Angela had any questions.
I was going to say, we have a question from Teresa up in Anchorage about how long you have to, or how often you have to replace the battery in the car battery for an electric vehicle. That was back actually during Devin's presentation. So yeah.
I thought I briefly touched on that. So we're seeing warranties, I guess, in the, what was the leaf? Was it 7 years and to 80% capacity? And I think all of us in Juneau have more or less exceeded that 7 years at this point and are above that nominal route. So we're seeing degradation of the batteries way below, what is warrantable. And with my leaf, at least in my experience, I haven't seen a notable amount of degradation. I think that is due to Juneau's temperature being so low on average, versus say Arizona, which has like a 100-degree summer all the time that really bakes those batteries, and whatever chemical reaction happens in the batteries that reduces their capacity seems to be strongly influenced by temperature. So we're expecting that batteries that are in Alaska are going to see really strong lifetimes. Another parallel to reference is utility battery energy storage. And like I said, for those, like a Tesla Mega Pack, for example, that a utility company would buy, those units are warranted standard 15 years to their factory capacity, with a 20-year extension if you want to pay for 5 more years. And for the 5 more years, they're expecting they'll come and change out a few cells, but it's not a huge cost. So, I mean, there is this idea that if you're charging and discharging, a couple times a day for 20 years, that this battery is going to be able to do that. So at that point, I think my Leaf is going to rust out far before the battery require replacement in our climate. That wasn't true in other climates, but I do think that's going to hold true for our climate.
Yeah, and I would just add, Teresa, that Juneau's a little bit different than Anchorage. We're in a more temperate, so we don't have too hot and too cold, where you get a little bit colder winters. You also sometimes get a little warmer winters, and that all has impacts on the battery. The other impact on the battery is your charging behavior. So if you religiously want to use fast chargers and zap your battery daily, like some commuters do in California, you have a less lifespan on your battery than if you run it down to 50% and then charge it up to 80 or 90%. A lot of people say, screw it, I want 100%. I want the charge all the way in. And you actually take a risk on that. So what I know on Leafs, and I've heard they're on Teslas and whatever, is you can actually get a computer thing where it can check your battery monthly, or with a Tesla, you can do it daily. You can see what your behavior is doing to your battery. I know all the Juneau folks, not all of them, but I mean, we started out knowing all of them in Juneau. There hasn't been any vehicles that have had to been shipped down and have their battery replaced yet. So the oldest vintage we have in Juneau is 2013 and 2014. I think there's a 2012, but so that's coming up on the 10 years. So we're still in the see how long it is. We have one person in our Juneau Electric Vehicle Association that I think he's Devin, is Kyle over 50,000 or 60,000 miles now? But he
He's over 100.
Yeah. Oh, okay. 100,000. That's what I was recalling. And Teresa, he's real religious and not messing his battery. So he's like going by the book to make sure he has battery longevity. And he's already over 100,000 miles on his 2014 Leaf.
So I do think that a lot of this guidance from the beginning has slowly changed over time. So like manufacturers are getting more comfortable with what, how much capacity they can draw out of the pack. So like, for example, I said earlier that you might read it and the battery might say it stores 100 kilowatt hours, but they'll only let you take out 80 and put in 80. And so we're seeing that move to more like a 90% capacity. And then I've heard the same thing about charging speed, and I think it's generally true, but I think it more is the temperature. And so we're seeing like the Leaf has no cooling of the actual battery itself, but pretty much every new vehicle that's come out since say 2017 has some sort of cooling or heating ability to condition the battery pack. So you don't get that heat buildup for fast charging as much in the newer models that we saw in the Leaf that caused as extreme degradation.
That's a very good answer, Devin. Teresa just asked another question. Are the batteries better today than his 2014 Leaf? I'll let you answer that.
Yes, so batteries have improved not only in their ability to store charge, but their ability to deliver it in terms of power as well. So the amount of power that we're getting out of each cell, the amount of energy that's being stored in that cell has increased significantly in the last decade. And so, yes, they are better. There was a good presentation from Tesla recently about they're moving to a larger, or like almost the size of a soda can kind of cell compared to the Duff had a picture of an 18650, and I mean, that's only a couple inches tall and maybe an inch wide or less. And I mean, they're going to be moving to a 2170, which is like, you know, beer can size. So the amount of lithium and everything that they can pack into these volumes is getting better and better over time. So that's why we're seeing the better capacity. There's also, people are playing with different, they don't have that presentation up, but people are playing with different cell types. So they have the cylindrical cells like you would see in a AA battery. They have these pouch cells like you would see in a cell phone battery. And they have what are called prismatic cells that are kind of like a combination between pouch and AA batteries. Kind of use like a little cube rectangular shape. And so each manufacturer uses a different one, and they have different reasons for choosing it, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think one's say better than the other. There's also different chemistries. So for example, like even in the Tesla line, some of them are lithium iron phosphate batteries, and some are nickel, cobalt, aluminum, and lithium. And so they have different trade-offs between performance and say safety, or performance and energy density and cost. So the lower cost batteries are the lithium iron phosphate ones. So if you order like a standard range Model 3, you might end up with an LFP battery instead of the higher performance cells they use for the NCA batteries. But again, it's all gibberish. Just, that was a rabbit hole, sorry.
Devin, it sounds wonderful. I was just going to say, I think I have the power to allow some of our attendees to talk and actually ask a question. If any of the people, there's just a few, about 8 people on, and if any of you would like to ask a question to one of the panelists, maybe just put a question mark in the chat box, and or write your question, and you don't have to write your question in, though, just put a question mark, and then I'll allow you to talk. There's a little allow you to talk button, and I'll see if it works. I've never tried it before, but we'll try another experiment and see if it works. If anyone out there has a question.
Or if you hit the raise hand button, it'll appear.
Yeah,
next
oh
to the
yeah,
name,
if you
it'll make it easy
want to
to-
raise your hand, that's okay too, if that works. Yeah, that would work too. Oh, Teresa wants to know my experience of being an EV user. I love my Leaf. We've never had any problems with it. We live up a high hill, and I have studded tires on it, and it gets up and down the hill great in the winter time. And we just have a regular charger that plugs into the wall at home, and that's been fine for us. Whenever we go out to Fred Meyer's, we plug in, and probably 90% 90% of the time, one of the chargers is available, and we just plug in while we shop. We were at a meeting or a concert or something out at the high school, the Valley High School, a couple weeks ago, and no one was plugged in at the library, and so we used the charger out at the library. So we're very opportunistic. If there happens to be a charger available where we are, we plug in. Otherwise, we plug in at home every night. But we love our Leaf, so we may upscale at some point in time to a Volt, but for right now, we're happy with the Leaf.
Are you plugging in just to gain more miles, or you don't have enough range to get home?
No, just to gain more miles. You know, it's like, oh, okay, this is free gas in our tank, and let's just plug in here and take advantage of it. So yeah, no. So far, we haven't been caught away from home where we've thought, oh my gosh, we can't make it home from here. We're pretty good about that. And our car is really, really nice too. I don't know what where you, instead of being in drive, you're in the B mode. And it seems like if we drive out the road, sometimes if we go farther out the road and come home, we come back with more miles than we went out with. And so it seems to almost charge itself, especially in the summertime when we're driving in the summertime.
So I saw a question pop up about when will CBJ's fleet be all electric? So currently we have 7 buses that are eligible for replacement under FTA grant funding requirements. And those are 2010 buses. So buses are eligible for replacement once they're 12 years old. So we've got 7 buses right now. We've got a fleet of 18 buses. The next round of buses will be eligible in 2028, and then the final round of buses will be eligible for replacement in 2030. So probably somewhere around roughly 2031, 2032. If everything goes well, we'll have an all-electric transit fleet.
And I'll take the next question about the Subaru. Let me go to my pictures and let me see if I can get us a picture of the new Subaru that's going to be coming out. I think I put it on here, but I'm not positive. So, Duff, did you put it on there? Bummer. I thought I did. Yeah, Subaru is coming out with electric vehicle.
I dropped the link in the chat if you want to click on it. You can-
Oh, there you go. Excellent. Thanks. I'll just pull it up. Dun, dun, dun. There you go. Look, the magic of the internet. Ask a question, you get it. There you go. Yeah.
We're still seeing your PowerPoint. Sorry.
What's that?
We're still seeing PowerPoint only.
Oh, no, I thought okay, let me hit stop share and I'll hit the other share.
This technology stuff is so fun.
Yeah. Now, can you see it? Can
Yep.
you see? Can you
Yeah,
see
it
the
looks
Subaru on the screen?
It looks beautiful.
Okay, I just want to make sure I did it right. Yeah, no, Subaru is owned by Fuji Industries, the same people who make Fujitsu air source heat pumps. And I bet you the Subaru is going to have a nice heater as a result, because what they've done is they've gone to a lot of the vehicle manufacturers have gone to a heat pump. Tesla was actually slow on it, but now they're putting in heat pumps as well. And what that heat pump does is it allows you to have your heater so it doesn't drain your heat. Subaru, Honda, Toyota, and it's amazing, since Toyota had the Prius out, which was an early hybrid model, but they've been slow to catch. They've been slow where there's been other vehicles. So Subaru's catching up, and I think they're going to be, it's hard to say, but they're going to be putting out a fine product if they have the same industrial strength they have for Alaska with their traditional Outbacks and Foresters. The other thing I'd mention is that the Kia and the other Korean manufacturer, although we don't have very many dealers in Alaska, I've been reading that they're also being well received for quality. So, stand by, because I think we're going to see more and more models pop out where it's going to be hard to keep up. Thanks, Devin, for getting that Subaru up there.
That's great.
My pleasure.
Any more quick questions? I think we've gotten all of them that are in the chat box. I think that's great. Well, I appreciate Devin and Duff and Rich and all the information, and I'm going to have to reabsorb it and go back and watch the video. And but I certainly learned a lot tonight, and I hope everyone who was on learned a lot. I have to apologize. I was not able to get Facebook Live to work. I'm not sure why, but little gremlins at work again. But we'll get tomorrow we'll get the video posted both on Facebook, on the AAR Facebook page, as well as anyone who signed up for this will get an email with a link to the video, so you can watch it again, share it with friends, and hopefully many more. We've learned from the previous sessions that many more people come on the following week, within the next week or two, and watch the video. So I'm sure that more and more people will watch it. We have 2 more sessions in 2 weeks. On April 20th, we're going to focus on grub and garbage, reducing the footprint of food and waste. And so that'll be really interesting and provide us all with something I think that we can do at our homes and businesses and with our families, getting our families involved. We'll be discussing community gardens and recycling and composting. And so hopefully people will tune in 2 weeks from tonight. Then in the final session on May 4th, we'll wrap up this series with a session on building resiliency and staying mentally and physically and emotionally positive through this the time of climate change, and what we can all do to stay healthy. And so hopefully people will tune in for that. Again, that'll be 4 weeks from tonight. So if you have any questions for this final panel, actually on health impacts and suggestions for staying healthy, you can email your questions to me in advance, because I'll be putting some questions together for that panel in advance of the panel. And my email is LindaAlaska, LINDALASKA 2003@gmail.com. And we'll get those questions to the panelists so that they can think about them in advance and include them in their discussions. And again, I just want to thank all the presenters and organizers and everybody who helped out with tonight. I learned so much, and I hope everyone who's watching this today and in the future learns a lot too. So thanks so much, Duff and Rich and Devin and Anjali for what you've been doing, supporting, and Steve Benke's in the audience. And so thanks to you all. I really appreciate it. Any last words while we sign off? Duff?
No, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity of ARP and JCOS putting this together. As we can see, we're at the beginning of that adoption stage, and the more we learn, the better informed we are to make our purchase decisions with. And as you can see, it's difficult with all the charging options, with all the vehicle options, and making it all work out. And Rich is out there trying to figure out all of our little problems on bigger scale problems with bigger vehicles, trying to make it all work. So it's going to be a learning process as we go through this and as the technology changes. So, we'll look back at this in 10 years and it's like that truck that, or those early pictures, we're going to say, well, we always talk about electric vehicles. Everyone has one.
All right. Thanks. Devin, any last words? Rich?
Oh, thanks for having us.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you. Well, everyone have a nice evening. And again, you'll get a copy. I'll make sure everyone gets a copy of the where you can go to the link, and please share it with your friends and family. All right. Have a good evening, everyone.